Hey there, welcome to the channel. My name is James, and here at 20th and 21st Movies, we are about all things cinema. All right, I wanted to come on here for just a few minutes to share with you my impressions or my mini review of this recent release from the Criterion Collection. It actually came out at the end of last year, back in December, and this was one of the late year releases along with the Michael Haneke collector's set. In this case, I'm talking about the 3 films by Mai Zetterling set that came out in December of 2022, and it includes the 3 films listed back here called Loving Couples, Night Games, and The Girls. And so far I have seen 2 of the 3 films in its entirety, and I am going through the last half of The Girls, and I will have completed all of these films. I absolutely love everything that I've seen so far in this set. The special features are just absolutely wonderful in terms of learning more about this director, Mai Zetterling. And I want to talk about that in just a second. But my first exposure to Mai Zetterling came not in this collector's edition set. My first exposure to Mai Zetterling came in this film here that's also included in the Olympics box set from Criterion, Visions of 8. You'll notice here that her name is listed on the second entry here, The Strongest by Mai Zetterling. So Visions of 8 is the coverage of the 1972 Munich Games, the Munich Olympic Games. And what they did is they commissioned 8 directors to cover a specific area of the Olympic Games and put their own cinematic spin on that event. In the case of Mai Zetterling, she chose to cover the weightlifting event in the 72 Olympic Games. And so you see her perspective and the way that she framed up the event. I thought it was really fascinating the way she, framed up the whole weightlifting competition, or just that segment that she was covering. And I think she did a really good job of The Strongest. So that was my exposure to Mai Zetterling. I knew nothing about her, based upon that, only that her contribution to Visions of 8 was awesome. You'll see her pictured right here, along with the other directors who were part of the project. You'll also see Osman Sembène, who of course is the father of African cinema. He is pictured here. He actually shot footage and was going to have a film included in this Visions of, Visions. It would have been Visions of 9 if he was included. But for whatever reason, they decided not to include Osman Sembène's film. And so it became Visions of 8. Mai Zetterling is one of the directors contributing to this project. She did The Strongest, the weightlifting competition. So that was my first exposure to Mai Zetterling, was through that. But going through this set has been such a treat because you not only get exposed to some more of the films from this awesome, very fascinating Swedish filmmaker, Mai Zetterling, but you learn more about who she was and what her contribution was to the world of cinema. She really started her career actually as an actress, and she went into a lot of acting roles in Hollywood films in the 1940s and 1950s. At some point, she decided that acting wasn't really, for her and wasn't her long-term passion, and that what she really wanted to do was go behind the camera and direct films, which she started to do, I believe, in the late 1950s. These 3 films in this set are from the 1960s, and I believe her first feature film is Loving Couples from 1964. Of course, you also have Night Games from 1966 and The Girls from 1968. All of these films are in black and white. They look absolutely phenomenal. Beautiful 2K restorations. These are new 2K digital restorations. And I gotta tell you, the black and white photography on all these films looks just absolutely wonderful. I mean, they are not perfect presentations. I mean, there are some areas of the presentations that aren't exactly tack sharp, but for the most part, you're getting really beautiful imagery from all 3 of these films. I think the 2K digital restoration work that they did on these films, just absolutely phenomenal. What you'll see when you actually pop in each of these discs, you'll see the writing at the very beginning talking about the restoration work. They did some phenomenal work cleaning up these prints and making these black and white films look absolutely, just terrific. If these films are ever put on 4K discs, I think, especially with HDR, I think these films could look absolutely phenomenal. But When you read about the restorations here in this enclosed booklet, it says loving couples, night games, and the girls are presented in their original aspect ratio of 1.66 to 1. These 2K digital restorations were undertaken by SF Studios and the Swedish Film Institute from the 35 millimeter original camera negatives. So it's from the original camera negatives, and it shows. I mean, these films look really nice. The grayscale, the black levels, the contrast, everything just comes across beautifully. There's nice depth in the image. And so these are really nice Blu-ray presentations of all three of these films. I think they've been beautifully restored. And when you look at some of the footage in the documentaries and you see these scenes looking in their rough shape, and you compare that to the actual presentations of the films on these Blu-ray discs, you can definitely see that a lot of work went into the restoration. And it's definitely part of the reason why I think this set is absolutely worth it. That plus the fact that you learn so much about Mai Zetterling in terms of her background as an actress, how she got into filmmaking, and just her filmmaking style as a whole, which really deals with issues when it comes to women's issues of, sexuality, independence, relationships between men and women, and in some cases going into areas that are, fairly provocative and in some ways a little disturbing, in areas that kind of make you think, especially when you go through these three films. So, I'll just talk a little bit about each one. Loving Couples is basically about three women who are in a clinic. They are all expecting, and they each have their own individual story. And Mai Zetterling does a really nice job of presenting to you each of these women's backgrounds through flashbacks, through memories, and just going back and forth in time. And you get a glimpse into the complexities of their relationships with the men that they're involved with. This film is called Loving Couples, the first film in this set, but it's kind of ironic because there's really not a lot in the way. In fact, as I think about the experience of watching this film, I don't think there's one example of true love that I felt watching any of these relationships unfold. It really seemed like a pretty cynical affair in terms of Mai Zetterling expressing, some cynicism in terms of marriage and relationships. But I think it was done very well. But it just seemed like nobody was really loving in this movie called Loving Couples. There's just a lot of unhappy couples and a lot of dysfunction. But I think Mai Zetterling used that to illustrate the complexity of relationships. And it's just a beautiful film. And these films feature some of the famous actors from Ingmar Bergman films that we see in several of the films that you would see in films like, The Seventh Seal, films like The Magician, The Virgin Spring, Persona. So Bibi Andersson features very heavily in these films, Ingrid Thulin, as well as Harriet Andersson. And these are all actresses who have appeared in Ingmar Bergman films. Of course, this is the Ingmar Bergman cinema set that I still need to finish going through. An absolute mammoth of a set from the Criterion Collection that I highly recommend based on what I've seen so far. It's just a phenomenal journey through that filmmaker. And that's part of the reason why I really appreciate this set from Mai Zetterling of these three films, is that you get to explore a filmmaker that you may not know very much about. I knew very little to nothing about Mai Zetterling, but I have a greater appreciation for her work going through these films in this set. I still need to finish the last film, The Girls. I'm about halfway through, but going through the special features, which there are not a lot in the way of special features, but the special features that are on here are absolutely fantastic. You have a discussion from Alicia Malone, where you learn a lot about Mai Zetterling's background and about her filmmaking style. She does a really nice job of breaking that down. You also have a documentary about Mai Zetterling called Maybe I Really Am a Sorceress from 1989, which is really, really good. And then one of the best features on here is a feature that includes Harriet Andersson, Bibi Andersson, and Lindblom, where shortly after Mai Zetterling passed away, you see the three of them in her home, meeting together. At that time, they were all around in their 60s. Of course, at this point, and that was 27 years ago in 1996. At this point, only one of them is still alive, and I think that's Harriet Anderson. B.B. Anderson has moved on, as well as Miss Lindblom. But just a fantastic discussion between those three, just talking about their process of working with this great director and just their other experiences in film. And then there's some other Swedish television footage from the production of Night Games, and just some really nice interviews and discussion about Mai Zetterling and her filmmaking style and the themes that she covers in her films, which can be pretty controversial, especially when you look at the next film called Night Games, which is basically about a man who is coming to his childhood home with his fiance. He is going through and dealing with the memories of his childhood growing up and his relationship with his mother, which basically not bordered on the areas of inappropriateness, but actually went into areas of inappropriateness is really what I would say about it in terms of some of the themes that were covered in that film. In many ways, pretty disturbing. And I think it's something I would caution people about when you see this film, that there are certain aspects of that film, Night Games, that will disturb people. But I think it's Mai Zetterling's way of, again, really pushing the buttons and pressing the boundaries and making people think about, what they're watching. And it's definitely the kind of film that leaves you with an impression and an experience you will not forget, for sure. Night Games. And then the last film is The Girls, which is basically about three actresses who are taking part in a stage play. And there's also relationships and connections between what they're doing in the stage play and their real lives. So I'm still going through that film, but these three films have really impressed me in terms of the various themes that Mai Zetterling is willing to go into, and that she does not hold back. And she has no fear of what she is presenting. It's definitely the kind of thing that makes you think, and you definitely are going to leave with a heavy impression having seen these films. So I don't want to spoil anything. You just have to experience it for yourself. But for me, who would I recommend this set to? Well, I would recommend this set certainly not to everyone, because everyone's not going to be into these types of films. But I would recommend it to people who are open to learning more about new directors, learning more about, say, foreign cinema, learning more about directors that they never heard of, and just getting exposed to other films to discover. If you're interested in that, then this is a set I would highly recommend. If you're not really into exploring or blind buys, or you have no interest in foreign cinema, then this is certainly not a set that I would recommend to you. So it just depends on what camp you fall into as a film fan. But if you're open to exploring and the discovery of new film and different filmmakers and films that are out there from around the world, this is definitely one to consider from this Swedish director, Mai Zetterling. Highly, highly recommended. These are the three films by Mai Zetterling. Of course, on the inside, you have 3 discs. So there is a disc for each film. Of course, I have the disc for Loving Couples in the player here, but the other 2 discs for Night Games and The Girls are shown here. You have a nice staple booklet, which is a very nice inclusion, which has a breakdown of each of the films, which is nice to see. This is, of course, Loving Couples. You've got Night Games and The Girls, but you've got some really nice, now this is a nice essay by Maria Larsson, Mai Zetterling, cinema artist. So you have a picture of the director, Mai Zetterling, here. Very nice. So this is a really nice addition overall from the Criterion Collection, a nice collector set. You get 3 films in this set, all worth going through. Fantastic presentations. You get a nice set of special features, not plentiful, but of high quality. Some nice documentaries included in here, some nice interviews. And I think that the Alicia Malone conversation is excellent and definitely worth going through. So overall, you get a lot of value in this set. And I would definitely recommend, if you're interested in picking this up, definitely consider picking this up in an upcoming sale. And I think you'll get a lot of value out of it. So those are my thoughts on the Mai Zetterling, the 3 films by Mai Zetterling set. Let me know in the comment section below if you have seen these 3 films, if you've seen other films from Mai Zetterling and what you think about those films. And let me know what else you have been watching out there in the world of physical media and entertainment. Let me know all that goodness in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time at the movies. Peace, or peace.